What is going on, everybody? We're back with baseball. A lot of stuff going on in the DFS world. We got a fun Wednesday because we got a big basketball slate tonight, golf, and then baseball tomorrow. I'm excited about this baseball slate. I'm really excited to get back into it. Opening day is it's like Christmas. I love it, and I'm really excited to have a nice baseball season. So, Sheets, we're gonna go game by game on this one. We're gonna try and figure out the format as we go with how we're gonna combine basketball and baseball. But guys, let us know how you prefer us to do it, and we'll try to make it work for you. And yeah, so with that said, Sheets, let's start going game by game, unless you have any overall thoughts.
No, I mean, there's going to be I think there'll be two main spots for hitting that people are going to key in on. But again, we have to talk through this because there's like 22 there's 22 hitting stacks, right?
Right.
There's like 22 teams you can pick from, and you have some good pitchers pitching in general, and we have to get a handle on how much ownership is going to flock to say the Dodgers and the Padre game, you know what I mean, and
right.
How low owned some of these other games are going to be. So we just got to get used to this. So we'll be unlike previous years. I remember the last year. I don't know about last year; it was weird, but the year before they started everybody off with like a 2-game slate. This year they're like right into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know this is the way it should be, in my opinion. This is the old MLB. This is the way that I grew up with it. So let's definitely make sure to do our best here. All right. There we go. We can add MLB. I'm trying to load my old videos, and just wanted to make sure that we had the MLB as an option, even though I know we're not doing it. We haven't done that one yet. All right. So first game thoughts. Do you want to start it off while I finish loading this other video?
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, I love to keep it simple, and I have 4 like main pitchers that I want to use in the slate, and I'll probably extend it, but I have 4 core ones, and one of them is Brandon Woodruff from this game. In general, it's usually not, it's usually a little scary to take a pitcher against Minnesota considering the power they have, but that's just kind of where I'm at going into it. Kenta Maeda, I didn't quite get to. I know we're not in a really good luck playing Kenta Maeda when you played. Like you always were on top of when he seemed to be on top of when he was going to have a good game. He just didn't make my top 4, and that's where I'm at with that. You want to talk about the pitching first? You want to go straight into the hitting?
Yeah, no, I like the idea of talking about just mentioning the pitchers first, even though most of the time we're not going to have interest. This is a spot where it's actually, I feel like it's very similar on both sides of it because they both are good offenses. I think the Brewers actually have a better offense than people will assume coming into the season. But I think that they both have a pretty decent strikeout rate against righties, especially the Twins, who is one of my favorite offenses this whole season. So I could see this going rough. If it was a smaller slate, I would say we'll get into the hitting and stuff like that in a minute, but I would usually be saying, hey, maybe we try and get to Woodruff here, and it's such a monster lineup, no one's going to play. But I don't know if we need to get that cute. Pitching, I definitely have interest in both. I lean Woodruff, but I will have some Maeda in my lineup, and I think they're both going to be fairly popular. I don't think you want to use them together on these big slates, just as a reminder for baseball.
It just hit me, by the way, how the format we did, which we can go back to. We go through the game by game, and then we circle back to our favorite from each position.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, makes sense.
That sounds good to me.
Okay.
All right. So hitting wise in this game, I don't think anybody's getting heavily played. The guy who would stand out are probably a little too expensive with the Yelich's and everybody, even down to Donaldson at 4.5 is interesting. But I just think that we're better off mostly fading this game, with the exception, of course, if we're not going to, the lineups we don't have Woodruff, we're going to have to throw one Byron Buxton lineup in there just for, welcome to the season kind of stuff, right?
I think we can even do better than that.
Okay, let's hear it.
Yeah, I could always get into some Keller against the righty.
Yep.
And if Woodruff's going to be popular, which he is because I'm playing him, I definitely think that he's somebody that you can use. So I do like Keller and Buxton as my 2 favorites. And I don't, maybe a 2-man or something. I don't know where Buxton's going to hit in the lineup, so who knows? But
right.
Maybe I would watch for that. I don't know who's going to be starting at catcher. but Jeffers is 2,400 if he gets in there.
Yep.
And the other thing that is that Nelson Cruz, I don't think he's playing, right? Or he's
no Cruz.
There is no Cruz. Okay.
At least no Cruz projected, I should say.
Right. I mean, Donaldson's, I guess, fine. Sano's fine. But I think from the Minnesota side, a Buxton and or a Kepler certainly makes a little sense to me.
Yeah, that would be my next guy. And he would be immediately followed by prediction. Miguel Sano will hit 40 home runs this season. I feel very comfortable with this, actually. I don't even feel like this is a large, thing. And maybe I'll make a wager on it. Supposed to spend a night doing my season-long baseball stuff for season-long bets. But Buxton, Kepler, Sano stand out as my favorite plays. And it's hard for me to get to these guys on the other side. The one thing I would say is that at 3,200, Kane is pretty cheap. You mentioned Jeffers. I don't know if you mentioned Jake Cave. Anytime you can get Jake Cave against a righty and you got the power upside, but also the righty who's probably going to stick in the game longer, so you're not going to get pinch hit for. And by the way, Kepler spent the entire offseason, this is what they say, hitting against lefties, trying to get that back, because he was really good against lefties 2 years ago and absolutely one of the worst in baseball history against lefties last year. Now I know he's facing a righty, but it's just worth it mentioning because we have good lefty relievers in the bullpen for Milwaukee. So there is a chance that both Jake Cave and Kepler could be out of the game, depending on whenever Woodruff goes out.
Or in best case scenario, they have a tough matchup. So
yeah.
The other thing I would say is, I gotta work on this a little more, because towards the end of last year we were talking about this a little more. Is you were helping me with this, just don't play guys in certain positions when other positions have a lot of value on or something like that. So we'll get to more of that maybe on smaller slates or whatever. So I was thinking that because I was looking at Hura's first base, second base eligibility. Mm-hmm. And I was just kind of just screwing around and putting Milwaukee guys in there, because I realized Colton Wong's not Milwaukee now, right? So when I put these two in, let's just say I wanted to play these two, mm-hmm. If I'm forced to put Hura in the first base slot as a result of doing that, is that bad? You know what I mean? Is that right? Is taking away a first base slot a bad thing? You know what I mean in general?
Right. Sheets, why don't you pull your screen up so we can? I think that you're saying makes a lot of sense. We
were already doing it.
No,
I was already on it.
A lot of sense what you're saying, though.
So for example, if in fact I wanted to do this, right? If I wanted to play Wong and so these would be my top 4 Milwaukee guys, for example. If I wanted to play a stack of some kind, what this is doing is making me play Hura in the first base slot because Wong is only second base eligible. Mm-hmm. So is it normally a bad idea to do that? Or I guess it always depends on the slate. So I'm not exactly sure where first base is overall on the slate. I haven't really looked at that yet. So is that the thing you have to do to figure that out?
Yeah. So I think that's a really good point that you're bringing up. But what I just would point out right here is that, first of all, Hira's he's a good enough player to where you can actually play him at first base. So I think he compares okay to the other ones. What I also will say is that second base, you'll find out this season, is actually much more loaded than in past years.
Really?
Yeah, I did. I realized that when we did our fantasy draft thing. There's just a lot of guys who are really, really solid at second base, and I think we're going to run into that. So we're probably going to find some cheaper options. But I totally agree that if you do that's the way you'd want to do it. Again, I'm not really trying to pick on either of these pitchers, so I'm not going to stack these guys. But I don't mind everybody in this game is probably going to be like a 10% for me that I'm going to play. And
the other thing, again, just because I have it written down, is the guy I like to include in stacks sometimes when is the catcher from where'd he go? Milwaukee, Narvaez. Yeah. I think he had kind of a shitty year last year. I think, I'm not sure, but he's always got power, and he's the guy that's always in my player pool. Let's put it that way. For a position that's usually in need of power.
Right. I got you.
But again, Milwaukee's certainly not my favorite stack on the board. I just, we're just playing around with a couple of different possibilities.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, you want to jump over to what is a game that I think we're going to want to get some stacks of, and I don't think we're going to be playing the pitchers much.
Is Baltimore-Boston?
Yeah.
So we messed around with this with both sides of this game. many different times. From playing all that Baltimore, outfield value, remember all that, to just basically picking on Boston like nonstop, and basically fading Boston offense nonstop too. We were basically just going after Boston the whole season.
Right.
So first of all, I think it's really important to know who's playing for Baltimore, like who's starting, what positions and stuff like that, because you have all these guys who, at least for me, are just oozing value. But I guess we could start with the pitchers, right? So I really didn't have much of an interest in either pitcher. I think Eovaldi might actually get a little ownership. People like to play him for some reason. I guess he throws 100. You know what I mean? And Baltimore might have, I don't know why, but they may still have a reputation of having a bad offense. But I don't know. I don't think I'm gonna play either of these pitchers. I think that Means is actually better than people might think. So maybe Means could be okay. But aside from that, I'm really not too interested in the pitchers. What about you?
I have a tiny bit of interest in Eovaldi, just because it's Baltimore, and I don't know exactly what we're going to see from them this year. And there's nobody in this lineup off the bat that just makes me feel afraid is really the answer. There is one really, really cheap play for Baltimore that's going to be
just one.
Assuming. Well, no, that's one for Baltimore that's going to be popular. I think maybe two actually. Well, I'm always into playing Mancini against power anything. Righty, lefty doesn't really matter to me. Another first base spot, so it's kind of hard to know where that ends up. But Cedric Mullins, assuming he plays at 2.1 and should be leading off. Now, Austin Hayes is also 2.1, but should be batting near the bottom of the order most likely. But if that flips, I don't mind going the other way. I just prefer Mullins a little bit. I think that Anthony Santander is too cheap. But I don't know if we want to get into all of this in this slate. We're going to have to go through it and figure it out, because all these guys seem okay, but I really like the Boston side. I agree that Means is probably better than what we think, but we've got guys who crush lefties mispriced on this Boston side. JD Martinez being the most obvious. So JD Martinez is going to be
before you go to Boston for a second, yeah, this was exactly the example that we dealt with, or I dealt with last year. Mm-hmm. When you had like all these Baltimore guys,
right,
that had all this value, and let's say they all played, but to play them, right, you had to take up all the outfield spots,
right.
And I forget what we ended up doing, right? You said, okay, this is when you're supposed to, this is when you're not supposed to do it. It was very confusing.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, right now, I'm going to treat it like a somewhat of a different situation, because it is but I mean, look, Chance Sisco is like, for example, is batting projected to bat 9th. He could easily, this happened last year. He'd be 9th or 1st. If he's first as a catcher at 3,100, that's a really interesting thing in a lineup that I kind of like. The game's in Boston, obviously a good hitter's park. But mostly I don't want to stack Baltimore on this slate. I want to play a couple pieces here and there, but it would mostly be Mullins, maybe Hayes, depending on where he ends up, Santander and Mancini, but not a huge ownership on any of them except for Mullins.
So go back to the Boston.
Boston is very it's pretty straightforward. You play JD, you play Kiki Hernandez, especially assuming that Kiki bats earlier in the order, which I think he will. The Red Sox really are trying to take all the Dodgers guys over here.
He's okay against lefties?
Kiki's like the best against, he is the
righty, right?
He's the one for the Dodgers who we played in every time that he was facing a lefty. Now the problem is he's going to be really popular. He is, but he's 3K. So he's it's an excellent value. Same thing with JD. I think if you're playing a cash game, you would start these are two guys you would start automatically, JD and Kike. And just to go back to the last game, you probably would be starting Woodruff as well. And you can mix it in with Verdugo, who's actually really good against lefties. And no one ever plays him against lefties. So you could get a nice little 3-man stack that way. And then you've got Hunter Renfroe, who historically had massive power against lefties, kind of got played out of the rotation in Tampa Bay last year, but should have a decent batting spot and definitely has the power that I want. So I'm going to be above the field on all of them. Because he's going to be so high owned, Kiki, I might end up a little under the field on, but I still have a ton of interest in him. And then I am not going to go crazy. I'll sprinkle them into stacks only, would be Devers and Bogarts, and even that will be pretty rare, as well as Vasquez. I just don't see myself paying 4.7 for a catcher on day one, but it's possible. I do think that all of these guys are in play though, and I just think that you're prioritizing the Renfroes, Kike, and JD. Now, if Bobby Dahlbeck gets an early spot in the order, I think we can talk about Bobby Dahlbeck and that he's the giant man against Means too. But all these guys look pretty good. I wouldn't play a guy like Marwin Gonzalez unless he literally was batting like third or fourth. Like I think he'll bat further down in the order, and just doesn't really have the power anymore, but could fit into a stack if he's batting third or fourth at his price.
So I was waiting for you to get to Bobby Dahlbeck. You did mention all 9 players for the Red Sox.
Yeah, they're all in total play. We just need to know the order, the rotation.
Yeah. From what, and again, I don't forget where I heard this, but I heard that Dahlbeck has been just kind of mashing the ball recently in spring training or whatever.
Yeah, which could lead them up. I mean, like, right, they have him projected 9th here, and I've seen that elsewhere. There's a chance he bats way higher in the order tomorrow. So that's a one to keep an eye on. And I mentioned all those guys because this to me is one of the other spots you can use. And there's going to be ownership here, but it's to get off the Dodgers, Padres, and it's also a stack that I could, Baltimore's bullpen still garbage, that you could see the 11, 12 run game.
I think Boston's bullpen's still garbage too, though.
Yeah, fair enough. But Boston actually has guys who can hit.
That's true. And you haven't changed. It's the same thing. You're still kind of, I don't want to say sour on, but you're definitely below the field. Let's put it this way on the prospects for Devers and Bogarts.
I'll stick with it as long as they're going to be priced as if they're Cody Bellinger, Mookie Betts, and these guys.
Right. Sounds good.
Yeah. This is a weird one we have here, and I almost feel like we can't even talk about it in some ways because we have no total for good reason. Game's in Chicago. We don't know what's going to happen with the weather. So this is going to be a weather-dependent game. Should the weather be in our favor and blowing in, I like Kyle Hendricks very much as a medium pitcher with maybe not the ultimate upside, but feels very safe. Should the wind be blowing out, you don't play either pitcher. And we're going to be stacking, not the Pittsburgh team, but we will be stacking some of the Cubs if we get the weather in our favor.
You completely took the words right out of my mouth, almost verbatim. Although I didn't even realize about the wind and the wind thing, whether we were unsure of it, that just further exacerbates my take. My take was going to be, honestly, like that Hendricks was one of my 4 top pitchers, regardless of wind. I didn't even factor that in. And the Cubs were like kind of like a middle of the road to upper tier stack for me without knowing about the wind. So what your comments is just perfect. If the wind's blowing in, give me the Hendricks. If the wind's blowing out, give me the Cubs. Yep,
exactly.
I'm in.
And I'm showing that Wilson Contreras might be fairly popular, and I'm not entirely sure why. I guess the 5K catcher thing, and the same thing with Vasquez. Like, I don't know. Are we all paying up for catcher used to be the thing we did because we wanted to get off the board, off the cheap chalk.
Yeah.
It seems odd that everybody seems to be wanting to play these guys. I do have 2 plays in this game that I absolutely love. Jock is my favorite play in this game. I think he was just crushing the ball in spring training. I think that, being a consistent mostly everyday player, batting in the middle of the order at 3,400, really hard not to have some interest in Jock and the power upside for me. And not just because I'm a sentimental Dodger fan and we appreciate him and we're sorry to see him go and all that, but the power's there. Ian Happ would be my second favorite. And I said we might be stacking it. It would take a lot of wind for me to stack it because I don't love the prices on these other guys. I'm just going to mention that my favorite always tournament play, because he's never owned, he's always high priced. He'll try to steal bases. He's got power and he bats in the right spot in the order, and that's Javier Baez. That's the only other big one I've got. By the way, the whole argument that started one of my feuds, I have to just mention real quick with Adam Scherer and some of the other guys, was the beginning of before last season, me saying that Chris Bryant was not a top 25 player in baseball. Chris Bryant was projected as the 107th best hitter in baseball this year. And last year he ended up in somewhere in the 150s or something for production. It was low. It was better than that, but it was still really bad. So just wanted to throw that out there. I think we can move on to the next one because that one really is going to depend on the wind.
And now is it binary? I mean, is it going to either blow in or out, or can it be a neutral situation?
It could be neutral. It's just the fact that there's no total on it lets me believe that they're still questioning what's going to happen.
There's a Twitter feed about like Wrigley wind. I forget where it is, but I think
we'll find it. I think it's right now. It's
we'll find it. We'll see it in the ownership projections.
We also know that in Wrigley, not quite as much as Colorado, but in Wrigley, the temperature and wind can change things in a drastic hurry. So waiting until the day of is usually the best way to go.
Okay. Philly, Atlanta. We talked about this a little bit when we did our preview video about the differences between types of pitchers. We talked about fantasy pitchers versus real life pitchers and a little bit. And while this is not the ultimate extreme example, you have Max Fried, who's he's really good. I mean, I really like him. Now, in fair, I think he blew up in a pretty nasty spot in the playoffs last year.
Dodgers, what are you going to do?
Yeah. But he's really, really good. And Nola may or may not be good. I'm not even sure, but he definitely definitely gets a lot of strikeouts.
Yeah.
Yet, he's pitching against the Braves can be tough. It can be rough business. So, I guess Nola's got to be considered as one of the better pitchers. He's not one of my top 4, but he certainly has to be considered up there. Right. And I wasn't going to get to Fried again. He's not a guy playing fantasy.
Right. He's not. Totally right. The price is very fair, and I'm trying to do some research right now as why the run total is so low. It looks like they've got some serious wind blowing in from Philly projected. And by the way, the current blowing in Chicago is blowing 16 miles an hour in. So we would be playing Hendricks and avoiding the bats in that game if that continued. And in Philly, it looks like it's going to be cold, 49 degrees, and the wind blowing in from left field, which does boost these guys a little bit. With Fried, it doesn't matter as much because he just doesn't give up home runs. So you have literally, I wouldn't love to throw a lefty pitcher up against this Phillies lineup, but Max Fried can get out of stuff. I think that Nola is the upside play, but these are 2 good offenses, and the Braves are one of the best in baseball, one of the best overall teams in baseball. So it's a tough one to know. I honestly feel like with the wind blowing in the way it is, and the fact they have a run total of projected of 7 combined, boy, it makes you want to take the pitchers, but I don't know. It's these are lineups that I don't feel great about attacking, although they do strike out a little bit. So as of right now, I'm sort of meh on these guys. I'm at like 10 percenters. I just want to see what else we can find because I don't want to pick on these teams. These aren't the absolute aces of the world, but with the wind blowing in like that, it's going to be certainly hard to get in too much trouble.
Yeah, so I guess we're going to try to avoid the hitting. I was going to say that my favorite hitting was going to be was on the Atlanta side. It was going to be just Freddie Freeman. Yeah. And then on Philly,
can I make a recommendation though about the one thing about Atlanta? Just be in mind that Ronald Acuna is going to have a monster.
Oh, he's the MVP for sure.
I actually think Soto is going to be the MVP, but I do like Acuna and him are probably the 2 best. They might be the 2 best players in baseball, not named Trout, and maybe potentially including Trout by the end of this year.
So my favorite Philly guy is the second year. I think he's second or third year. I like Alec Baum at 3,100. He definitely showed a lot of promise last year, and he's pretty cheap. And that would probably be my favorite, especially with the wind blowing in. I don't know if I'd want to pay $5,000 plus for the power there with the wind blowing in, like the Hoskins, Harper, Real Muto, who would be my favorites. And Andrew McCutchen never did anything for me. He always projects well, and he always shows up in optimal and stuff. He never did anything for me.
It's because he's been cheap and he's not been producing, but he still hits the ball hard. The advanced stats are actually better than some of the real stats are. Okay. He's not the same guy he used to be, but I just think on this particular, and also I'm never going to try and pick on Fried. He just doesn't give up home runs. Yeah. So especially the wind blowing in, I think we're pretty clear to favor. I agree with what you said though, basically in order. I would play Baum above the other guys because he's so cheap, but you are losing a third base spot, which is pretty valuable. I think Hoskins also, just throwing it out there, I think he'll have a monster bounce back year too.
All right. St. Louis, Cincy?
Yeah, we must have some more cold weather or something because these are really low total. I know we got good pitchers, but these guys, talk about being low. Let me double check the weather projection here. 40 degrees. I guess that's the reason. But the wind is blowing out, although it doesn't matter as much in Cincy. Yeah, okay. I think we're interested in some pitching here. What side are we on of the very chalky Luis Castillo versus the extremely high upside and slightly cheaper Jack Flaherty?
Damn, what a loaded goddamn question. Unbelievable. fine. I'm the freaking chalk donkey that has freaking Castillo as one of my top 4 and
There's
not
nothing wrong with
Flaherty.
that. Nothing wrong with that.
Fine, no, that's fine. Who do you like? The really chalky Moto Yawn play Castillo or the really cool upside low on Flaherty? I don't know. Maybe I'll take Flaherty, I suppose. So I guess we like Flaherty.
I have them closer to even than I thought. Like, I still think Castillo is a little bit safer. It's hard to use the word safe with him.
Yeah, but in fairness, he walks people, which is annoying.
That's why I said it's hard to use the word. And Flaherty's leash sometimes it goes different directions. But yeah, no hitters in this game for me right now in a 40-degree game. I understand it's a great hitting park, but you have, again, a 7.5 run total should in baseball, we're going to use projected totals for a lot more than we are in other sports. And sometimes we'll try and use it as ways to get off the chalk and say, hey, maybe this isn't right, or we can get this and that. But right now, I'm gonna treat this as mostly a stay away from the hitting game at the moment, and both have around potentially like up to 25% of both of these pitchers, sort of along with the first game, guys I really, really like and fit in nicely, really good prices, and could both have the upside to be the highest scoring pitcher on the slate. The lineups are not like anything to shake your head at. These are not like terrible lineups at all, especially on the St. Louis side. But it's nothing that I'm afraid of throwing these guys out there and just hoping for the best, because they have plenty of K upside, and chalk or not, I do like Castillo probably is the better play, but I just think Flaherty at a significantly lower ownership is definitely piquing my interest.
Nolan Arenado's in St. Louis, huh?
Nolan Arenado is now in St. Louis.
Yeah, I have to get used to that, I think. Yeah,
I know, it's a little weird. Speaking of chalk, I don't have any hitters in this game at the moment, because it just doesn't. These are not guys I'm trying to pick on. It's a big slate.
Who's chalky? You were going to say, speaking of chalk.
I was going to jump over to the next game.
Oh, okay, let's go.
Tyler Glasnow in Miami. This feels like probably the better of all the options we went through, and will be, at the moment, I have him as my highest owned pitcher on the slate. So it's Miami. We know that occasionally they can be pesky, and everybody says this. It's mostly just because everybody plays everybody against Miami. So, of course, sometimes they don't, they put up a few runs. But Tyler Glasnow is one of the better pitchers in baseball. He's too cheap, and he has one of the nut matchups in baseball. You can see another 7.5 run total here. And by the way, on the flip side, I think Alcantara is actually an eligible potential having a breakout year kind of a guy. So they're both in play, but I'm severely on the Glasnow side. And again, I hate to say it, but in Miami, we could play the greatest player of all time in a Rosarena if we want to. We could play Yoshi Tsutsugo, but the problem is I don't like the platooning of the Tampa Bay players. We don't have to worry about that with a Rosarena. So I have a Rosarena at 10% and no other hitters at the moment.
Yeah, this completes my 4-pronged chalk pitcher approach. And as Glasnow is being the fourth. So my 4 pitchers are the very high owned Goodruff, the very high owned Glasnow, now with the win, the very high owned Hendricks, and the very high owned Castillo. So with the idea being, guys, that if you're going to play this way, that means that I don't get to play the Padres and I don't get to play the Dodgers. I don't think. Not because you can't get them in, because you can, but you just can't go chalk everywhere, I suppose. Maybe, I think you might have come up with the right pivot in that last game. Is the Flaherty. Yeah.
Or you could do my favorite thing, Sheets, just play those two guys together.
Yeah. The other thing is that with respect to the hitting, the Tampa side, the only guy I would play is Arizona is fine, but I like Brandon Lau maybe a little bit. Mm-hmm. If I had to play somebody, he's cheap enough. And then I always just kind of look at this. If you had to play a Miami guy, well, I mean, you have freaking Corey Dickerson's basically free. I mean, he's very cheap. I mean, in non, does he have any power though? I don't know. In non, I was gonna say in non-Glasnow lineups, maybe you could play some Corey Dickerson if he fits. This weird feeling he's going to get owned somehow. I don't know. But no, you got Mullins. You got other guys like that. Okay. So Corey Dickerson would be the one guy I would, I guess, take from Miami.
Yeah, I totally agree with all the things you said. Don't really have anything there. We can jump over this one. Do you want to start it off? Because I'm just realizing now that some of the basketball is selling out, that I kind of need to make sure that at least I get my reservations in.
Really, it's selling out.
Yeah, it's the last big one. That's what happens. Let's see. Sorry, I'm basically ready. You can just go to the next one.
If I stall long enough, maybe I'll get shut out. All right, so Dodgers, Colorado. Yeah, so a couple of guys what I'm not doing. I'm not going to play Kershaw in Colorado.
Yep.
I actually, you know what, if the Dodgers weren't so goddamn patient, I would try to play Marquez just as something to do. But they'll just take all the walks if he screws around. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to get to him either. So I'm out on both pitchers in this game.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Yeah, I don't think that you're going to play the pitchers in this game. I do think for the season, I think we're going to see lower projections and maybe a guy who I think is a little bit better than he gets credit for in Marquez, however we want to pronounce it this year. But yeah, nothing for me in this game, pitching wise.
Hitting side, I didn't. Well, do Colorado first. Yeah, I mean, I think all these guys are good. Yeah. The problem is that the Dodgers have an incredible bullpen too. Right. You know, if Kershaw gets into trouble, so I don't know. CJ Cron is only 3,800. First time course for him, I guess. Mm-hmm. Got to see who's playing and what positions and stuff. Tapia, do we ever make any money on Tapia? I don't know, maybe. He's
supposed to have a better year this year, but I'm not a big. I hadn't been a big guy with Tapia in the past.
McMahon maybe. Blackman, expensive, but Blackman's always good. But he's gonna strike out the first two at bats. He just is.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe nobody. Maybe CJ Cron. Maybe that'll be the guy.
Yeah, I'm okay with the Cron thing. I don't think I really want to pick on Kershaw in general, especially because it's very oddly enough, he's given up more home runs to lefties than righties for a little while now. The Dodgers are the best stack. They're going to be popular. They're expensive. One way you can get different is by playing Gavin Lux. Maybe you can't actually, because I think the Lux actually might get some ownership too. Assuming AJ Pollock plays, he might be a little bit lower owned. I love him here. My preferences are usually you can get lower ownership on the lefties for some reason. I think these projections are just off that I'm looking at, because I can't buy that the lefties are going to be more popular than Mookie at the same price. But usually that's the way you get different. And right now Muncy's showing up as the lowest owned. So just go ahead and play that guy. Between Muncy, Bellinger, and Seager, they're all going to probably hit in the 40 home run range if they're healthy this year. And I think Seager and Bellinger are better hitters than Muncy, and Muncy walks a little bit more, so it's a little worse for DFS. But when the ownership gaps are there, you can pretty much take your pick. I'm sorry. Why did I have Marquez? You know, I was missed. That's why they're showing up more. Because I, for some reason I had Marquez listed as a lefty, which is really bizarre. So I understand exactly what's happening. I understand why it's happening like this. So flip it around. Maybe you say the righties, but again, I mean, the prices are good on Turner, Pollock, and no wonder Lux is going to be so popular. Yeah, it's just a matter of how you want to build out the stack. This is one that.
Why? Who's out? You said.
Nobody's out. I was mixing up Marquez as a lefty for some reason at first. Just my brain skipped. Got so many sports going on. But I mean, I think the Dodgers stack is the best stack. I just think that we're talking about pretty high ownership. So maybe I use them as a secondary stack with a 2 or 3 man or something like that. Hope to get my production that way, because I don't love playing a chalk stack on a giant slate like this.
Yeah, all those guys, Seager, Bellinger, Muncy. Start with the lefties, I guess. Lux. Yeah, I mean, I just wouldn't play the chalk pitchers with them. That's the best I could describe that.
Yep.
Like those are going to be like, maybe I'll play a Flaherty, Alcantara or something like that with with these guys. And Alcantara's, I like that play. That's a good play, actually.
Yeah.
And by the way, you weren't kidding, man. Like those NBA contests are gone.
Yeah, they're just disappearing really quick.
Like the 555, whatever the big one is, I don't know what it was, but whatever it is gone.
Oh, wow.
I think. And there's a 444 that's 10K for first. So I guess that's not it, right?
Wait,
I hope you got in what you needed.
Yeah. Which ones what was it you talking about?
I'm looking at the 444 in the NBA, which is
I got in that one, and then I've got to get 15 into the 100.
okay. You got there's still 1,000 people left in that one.
Yeah.
So you got a little time for that. Okay. You want to move on to the next chalk spot?
Yep, let's do it.
No. Okay. So so here's the problem. So yeah, I mean, Yu Darvish certainly is he had a really good year. Whatever his control issues were, I guess, got either taken care of or mediated or whatever. And he's going to have a really good year. He probably projects to be a pretty decent pitcher in this spot too. I don't know if I'm going to. Again, he just didn't make my top 4, but he certainly has to make my top 6 or 7, right? Like he certainly has that kind of upside.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the Arizona side, definitely do not want to play a Bumgarner.
Yeah, Bumgarner is the one we want to pick on, I think, coming into the year. I like Darvish a lot. I'm just going to put like a little thing that we saw San Diego not extend their pitchers very long, including guys like Clevenger last year. And Darvish's whole thing is he always can pitch pretty deep into games. Huge upside here. Got to have some of them, but going to be really popular. Maybe I go a little bit different and don't play a ton of him. But he does stand out as being a very solid play. From the hitting perspective, it's San Diego's the other chalk, right? But there's plenty of.
I think they might even be more so
than the Dodgers. You think?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just remind it. The stadium's become better for hitting than it used to be, but it's still not like an ideal hitter's park. A little bit above average for a lot of righties, so I could see why they'd go there. Maybe you can mix in some of the lefties. That maybe Hosmer seems a little expensive at first base, but maybe you could throw in a Cronenworth, although I mentioned second base is strong. But certainly Tommy Pham would stand out as being, to me, the best play and kind of ridiculously priced. And then you have the Tatissa Machado. I always will prefer Tatissa, but certainly open to Machado as well. Probably will be underweight on these guys, another chalky stack, but it doesn't mean I don't like them. Will Myers is the least popular and actually had really good numbers last year. So I'm ready for a Will Myers decent season. And then Caratini at the bottom of the lineup at 2,600, I think is interesting for their catcher.
Will Myers is probably my favorite, given the combination of ownership and upside and all that other stuff. He's probably my favorite. As for Tatissa Machado, I mean, all I'll say is that, hitters fail more often than they don't. That's the best I could describe it.
Right.
So if these guys get to be like 30% owned, which is very possible. I mean, honestly, like Tatis could be 30% at 5,700. I'll tell you who else could be 50%, 30%. Tommy Pham at 3,100. That's like the type of guy that will end up in everybody's San Diego stat, like literally everyone, because he's 3,100.
Right.
So I mean, if you want to get different, maybe like leave him out or something like that. The other thing I will say, I'm not going to play him, but look, he's definitely at the end of his career, whatever it is. But Bumgarner's got pride. He's sneaky. He's, you know what I mean? Like he still has tricks, and I just don't think he's just a complete colossal waste of space. You know what I mean? And I think he still takes some pride in getting that opening day start. Always hearing about the whole, leading up to this, how the Padres are all MVP candidates. They're going to just crush him and whatever. And I don't know, maybe he's got tricks, and maybe he like picks around and doesn't give him anything to hit or something like that. So I think that I think this is actually an easier fade than the Dodger one. Not that either of them are that easy, but I can see myself getting away from this. I mean, there's, like I said, there are 22 teams you could pick. You could even
Arizona that Bumgarner is your opening day starter. That's really embarrassing.
Yeah, but the other thing about this game is that the guys are going to rate as like incredible values is actually on the Arizona side.
Yeah, I know. Ketel Marte and David Peralta especially stand out to me as guys I really like. Rojas maybe, but like I would rather play Marte and Peralta, who are really solid hitters, along with Escobar. The problem is it takes up your third base spot. So, but I do agree with you. I think all those guys are completely in play, and maybe you could even do a full game second. I'm just take a quick look. This is probably going to be one of the better, warmer weather games of the day. yeah, 79 degrees. Hey, we'll take it. Like that's pretty decent hitting conditions for this time of year. So definitely kind of interested there.
And you know what? You get Carson Kelly at 2,100 if you want to.
Sure. Another catcher.
Stick that in there also.
Yeah, I don't think you want to be stacking them, by the way, just because Yu Darvish is a little too good. Even though he walk guys, he's a little too good to really get rocked, I think, by this Arizona team.
Yeah.
All right, Texas KC. What are we going to do? But you know what? Now we have to look at Sheets. We have to look at Texas like the San Francisco Giants, and I can confirm that from having been to the World Series this last year in the stadium. The ball doesn't carry. I don't know what they can do to make that different, but this is not in Texas. So all of these Texas guys being cheap actually is appealing to me.
Okay, so first of all, for you, I don't remember if you actually played him, but this was my hero in one of the slates last year. I got the Kyle Gibson 43-point game at 5,900 back here. I forgot at Houston. Forgot exactly why, but I think you turned me on to him. I think back here against Seattle, and then he had one blow-up game, and then I went right back to him, and he was great. I'm hearing
last year, but by the way, he's a much better pitcher. It was a weird year, so we have to kind of be open to the fact that he might be good this year.
Okay, so I'm hearing that Brad Keller is a good play. I guess for some, I don't know. I guess for some of the reasons you mentioned, that Texas really not good or whatever. He didn't make my top list, so what can I say? What I was hoping was that it was going to be someone other than Gibson, because these Kansas City guys, I mean, that's something I kind of want to do.
Yeah.
And what's his name is a pretty decent addition. There's the guy from I think from Cleveland went there, right? Carlos Santana.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they got some dudes, man, that can swing a little bit. So I between Solaire, Dozier, Merrifield, paying up for Perez, maybe you get the late day hammer fading the Colorado, San Diego, and play these Kansas City guys. Now again, Gibson's not bad, so you have that problem. But this would be my, if we had a name for it, this would be my, I don't even know if it's sneaky. This would be kind of like my sneaky hitter stat.
I agree on both sides, though. I like both sides of this game. We don't have to look. We used to pay 5.5 for David Dahl. Now we only have to pay 2.5 for David Dahl.
Benintendi's on KC too. Oh, let's go.
Yeah. Then you've got, I mean, I'm going to start with Texas because I actually like the Texas side a lot. I love Joey Gallo, one of my favorite one-offs of the slate. One thing I love about Gallo is when he does just get pitched around, he'll occasionally just go out there and steal a base for you too. So you can get a little bit upside that way. You know what I mean? And he's 3.6, which is way too cheap for him to be outside of Texas. All of these guys on KC, I think are going to have decent ownership, but not enough to where, we shouldn't be considering playing them. I think Jorge Solaire would be my favorite play. I think that just because he's 2.8 and could easily be 4.8 and is really not marginally different than any of these guys. Santana, off the worst year of his career, I'm counting on a bounce back. Benintendi, another guy who was terrible, counting on a little bit of a bounce back. Hunter Dozier, I think, has got enough power to be in play against Gibson. Like, as much as I said Gibson's in play, I think we can absolutely pick on him too. And one thing we love about stacking the Royals is they have multiple ways to get you there, because a lot of, like, Merrifield, Mondesi, Benintendi, these guys are going to be running.
Mondesi is out. He's on the 10-day IR.
Oh, interesting. I've got him in the lineup at the moment. My bad. I think that was recently announced, I guess.
Yes, it was announced about an hour and a half ago.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, that's why it's still happening like this. But yeah, these guys are, I mean, still Merrifield. I like this. I think we can definitely get involved here. This would be probably my favorite overall game stack outside of Coors, but I don't really want to stack both sides of Coors. So yeah, I'm into it. Let's well, maybe Baltimore, Boston, and KC, Texas.
By the way, it's kind of a shame. So I have remember I played Mondesi like 2,900. And then he look how he finished the season. Look at these fantasy points to end the year against Detroit. Look at that.
I know.
30, 32, 25, 24.
What a monster.
All right.
Because things are selling out, Sheets, do you mind if we do maybe FanDuel? We'll try and do a quick show before the lock tomorrow.
Yeah, fine by me.
I think that might be good because I'm not quite as prepared for FanDuel either as I would be normally.
Yeah, I'll even let you off the hook for doing position by position.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I
No,
think
it's fine by me. Why don't you go over your like you said, like just reiterate your top pitchers and your favorite stacks.
all right, I'm gonna jump over. So my favorite stacks would be Dodgers. I mean, Dodgers are the ones I expect to score the most runs, but I want to try and get the low ownership side of it. Other than that, I like the KC Texas, both sides of that game. I like Boston a lot. Those would be my main ones to start off with. And, if things turn around in Chicago, we can talk about them a little bit. But those are the stacks I'm looking at for the most part.
I'm going to be probably playing a decent amount of lineups actually, because I want to sprinkle of a couple of different things. So I think the Padres and the Dodgers certainly stand out, but I like KC. I like the Boston Baltimore game. I do like both sides of that. I had liked the Cubs, but not anymore. And I kind of want to maybe take a shot at Milwaukee as kind of an off the border. So, but I'm probably going to play a decent amount of lines. I do want some sprinkles.
Yeah.
What about your pitchers?
Pitchers, top pitchers I've got are let's see, in order. Well, they're pretty close. I have them rated as right now because it's still my first build, and usually I spread it out. I get more fine-tuned later. Highest owned would be Glasnow, followed by a combination of Flaherty, Castillo, Woodruff. Then I'll be a little bit below the field, but I'll still have a good amount of Darvish and Maeda, and then Kyle Gibson and Kyle Hendricks. Kyle Hendricks actually probably will bump up a little bit because if that weather stays like that. So
Woodruff, Glasnow, Hendricks, Castillo, chalk for me for starters, and then you sold me on the Flaherty since he's the next guy in my list. And the other guy that I'll throw in again, kind of the anti-World Series play, is the Alcantara.
Yeah. I like that actually. I actually think I might want to get a little bit more of Alcantara. All right, good stuff, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Sheets, anything else?
Yeah, I need some throat lozenges now from that.
Yeah, it's a lot of talking we've done. All right, guys, good luck to everyone out there. And let's crush it this year.
Good luck.